Um, Let me introduce Maha. Hassan. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with JALT for the first time. I have been to different conferences, but it's the first time to join JALT as a presenter, so it's a great pleasure to meet you all. Let me introduce myself quickly. I'm an educational consultant, teacher, trainer, and a founder of Teaching Yes and Hub. I'm also a newsletter editor for Ipsen SIG, Inclusive Practices SIG of TEFL, and I also teach at Cairo University at the Faculty of Politics and Economics. Today, I'm going to speak about task-based story writing. Let me start by asking you first, are you aware of what is task-based? Are you aware of what is task-based? How do you understand task-based, or what is task-based learning? You can write in the chat. Do you have an idea about task-based learning? Because it's the main core of the whole session. Yes. Any ideas to come? Yeah. Here, students learning through activities. Yes. Yes, Mark. Thank you. With the task, yes. Hiroshi. Thank you. That's the main idea. Task-based learning. We are not just doing. We are not just teaching and asking the students to sit in groups and just discuss things together, but they are going to do some activities together, which is going to make them interactive enough in order to benefit as much as possible of the lesson that we are introducing. So that's the first part of the title, task-based. Let me move on to the idea of the story. What are the main elements of a story? What are the main elements of a story? Elements, not divisions of a story. When you read a story, you usually have an idea about what? Or get an idea about what? Yes, yes, Mark. Mark is very interactive. He says character, plot, setting. Yes, that's very great. Yes, come on, don't be shy. Just go ahead. Yes. Any other ideas? Okay, so let's go ahead. Conflict and resolution. Okay. Okay. They have different meanings. Okay, or different words. Yes. Okay. Catriona. Okay, it's fine. Any other ideas before we move ahead? Okay, that's great. Before we start, and I've already posted this idea, what are the most important elements of the story? So the most important elements of the story are the title of the story, the name of the story, that's the title, the character, the plot, the setting. We have characters, we have. The second question is, what are the main divisions of a story? What are the main divisions of a story? When you read the story, you usually go through what? Come on, be brave enough. Come on. Beginning, yes. Catriona, that's great. Beginning, middle, and end. These are the main categories of a story. Don't go that far. It's very, very simple. Okay, that's quite great. So we are going to watch a very simple story for about 2 or 3 minutes now. Are you familiar with the story of Little Red Riding Hood? It's a classic, simple story that can be used in class. It's very simple. We are going to listen to the story, and then I would like you to, when we finish listening to the story, I would like you to fill in this matrix with me. Would you keep a note of this matrix aside while you are watching the story, please? This is called narrative story elements matrix. You need to fill in the title, the setting, the characters, point of view, keep the point of view to the end, the problem and the solution. These are the main points that we are consolidating. The title, the setting, characters, problem, and solution. Keep these points aside, okay? And then while watching the story, please try to fill them in. Okay? So this is the story of Little Red Riding Hood. I will just share the computer sound. Okay, tell me first if the sound is okay.
Little Red Riding Hood lived in a wood with her mother. One day...
Okay, is the sound okay for you? Is the sound okay?
Sound is great.
Can you hear it quite well? Okay, that's fine. That's great. Okay, let's start again. Remember that you are going to fill the matrix while you are watching the story.
Little Red Riding Hood lived in a wood with her mother. One day, Little Red Riding Hood went to see her granny. She had a nice cake in her basket. On her way, Little Red Riding Hood met a wolf.
"Hello,"
said the wolf.
"Where are you going?"
I'm going to see my grandmother. She lives in a house behind those trees.
The wolf ran to Granny's house and ate Granny up. He got into Granny's bed. A little later, Little Red Riding Hood reached the house. She looked at the wolf.
Granny, what big eyes you have.
"All the better to see you with,"
said the wolf.
Granny, what big ears you have.
"All the better to hear you with,"
said the wolf.
Granny, what a big nose you have.
"All the better to smell you with,"
said the wolf.
Granny, what big teeth you have.
"All the better to eat you with,"
shouted the wolf. A woodcutter was in the wood. He heard a loud scream and ran to the house. The woodcutter hit the wolf over the head. The wolf opened his mouth wide and shouted,
"Oh!"
and Granny jumped out. The wolf ran away, and Little Red Riding Hood never saw the wolf again.
Okay. Do you like the story? Okay, so what's the title of the story? By the way, you can open the mic and just speak right away. If you don't want to write in the chat, you can just open your mic and speak. It's okay. No problem about this. That would be highly interactive. Yeah. So what's the title of the story? Yes, Yumiko, Little Red Riding Hood, that's great. What about the setting? Please express all your ideas. Please, this is very, very important. Don't be bashful. Just get on the chat or open your mic if you'd like to speak. It's okay. No problem. Mark is not going to speak now. What's the setting? We are aware of the setting. The setting is the place where the story takes place. So how many ideas do we have in here? The woods, yes. Granny's house, that's great. Yes, that's true. The woods and Granny's house. Any other suggestions? It's the woods and Granny's house. That's great. What about the characters? How many characters do we have? How many characters do we have? 4. 4. What are the 4 characters? What are the 4 characters? What are the 4 characters? The first one could be Little Red Riding Hood, that's right. We have the wolf, We have the mother, yes, that's right. Grandma and woodcutter. So here we have 5, not just 4. We have 5 characters. Okay, so this is very important. Sometimes, Toro, yes, that's great, Toro. Yumiko, that's great. So we have 5 characters because sometimes we can skip the mother, which appeared at the very, very beginning of the story. She appeared for just a second or something, so maybe the students would skip such a thing. So here we have the mother again, so we have 5 characters. So here, this kind of interaction among the class, that the students would say 4, others would say 5, that's very, very important, because that's a kind of challenge, or what we say problem solving, that we set for the students while we are working with them. And this is one of the keys for the task-based learning. That's wonderful. What is the problem in the story? What's one of the problems? We have lots of problems over here. What's one of the problems that really took place in the story? If you want to open the mic again, go ahead, no problem. The wolf ate Granny, yes, Toro, that's one problem. Was there a solution for that problem, Toro? Was there a solution for it? Was there a solution for that problem? Any suggestions? Toro mentioned that, what do you mean by the woodcutter? Yes, the woodcutter helped the granny out of the wolf. Yes, he didn't mean it. He just wanted to help Little Red Riding Hood first. And so he hit the wolf. So Granny came out of the mouth of the wolf. So the woodcutter helped her. Yes, Yumiko, that's right. So the problem was that the wolf ate the grandma and the woodcutter helped her. Any other problems? Any other problems in the story? Go ahead, go ahead. Don't be bashful. Come on. Feel free to express your ideas any way you like. It's a task-based learning, so you are free. Will went into the woods by herself, maybe, but you know, if you are familiar with the story, her mother sent her to her grandma, but there was this little point which was skipped at the very beginning of the story, that her mother told her not to speak to strangers. So did she speak to strangers on her way home to her grandma? Did she speak to a stranger? What do you think? Mother should have gone to the grandmother's house with her daughter, Yumiko. That's a good point. Why not? Why not? So she didn't do that, and because of that, what happened? Unfortunately, she met the wolf. Okay, so did she speak to a stranger on her way to her grandma? Yes, she did. Who did she speak to? Who did she speak to? She spoke to the wolf, yes, that's right. And was there a solution? And because she spoke to the wolf ran quickly, ate her grandma, and sat in her bed. Was there a solution for that problem? She caused the problem. Was there a solution for it? What do you think? How did the story end up? How did the story end up? Come on. Okay, I can see some of you already writing. Come on, we want to see the answers. Okay, so yes, she caused the problem by speaking to a stranger, and because of that, but finally, the woodcutter came up and helped her. Okay, so we can consider it some kind of solution, but it's not an exact solution. So again here, where she shouldn't speak to strangers and tell things. Yes, that's right. Okay, that's right. So here you have the main elements of the story. If you are in class and then you start asking your student questions about the story, as I've already done with you, what's the title of the story? What's the setting, characters? Was there a problem? What kind of problem? Was there a solution for it? Who helped? And then you start going on and ask the students WH and yes, no questions. This helps a lot in two things. Number one, you're going to help your students, I'm sorry, you are going to make sure that the students understood the story or most of the story. That's one thing. The other thing is that you are going to help them to speak out. So you can use the story here as a double element. Remember that when we are using stories to teach something, we should have a definite, a specific objective for using it. Don't just use the story for story's sake. We should have an objective for that. So one of the objectives of using stories is to develop the speaking skill. Another one can be to develop the writing skill, as we are going to do today. But remember that the four skills of teaching the language are integrated and we cannot separate things from each other. So here, when we start asking questions, it's very important because we are going to encourage the students to start speaking. This idea, they are not going just to speak for speaking's sake, but they are going to retell the story in a different way. So when you ask the students to fill this matrix, you can start posing questions, again, to make sure that they understood the story, and then you can ask them to retell the story. For the first student, what happened at the beginning of the story? There was Little Red Riding Hood. What did she do? Her mother told her to go to her grandmother. So the next student is going to give you another sentence, the second one, another sentence, and so on. This idea of retelling the story is very, very important because it helps the students to gain confidence that they really understood something from the story that you are going to use as your main tool to achieve the objective of the lesson. So you can ask the students, for example, from left to right to tell the story, and then go back again from right to left again, asking the students, each one to give you one sentence about what happened inside the story. So in this case, you make sure that all the students are engaged with your task before you start beginning the whole piece of work. And then you can, again, at the very beginning, divide the class into groups, ask each group to have this kind of matrix, and they start working together on the matrix. So when you discuss things, they are discussing things in groups. So even the average or the weak students are going to get interactive because they are going to gain confidence because they are working together in groups. This is very, 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 very important. Remember at the beginning when we started talking, we discussed the idea of what are the main elements of the story, and then we moved on to what are the main divisions of the story. So let us move to the main divisions here. We have something very interesting which is called the graphic organizer. A graphic organizer is a kind of drawing different kinds of shapes that you set together to help the students to put or divide the info that they have learned through the story into an organized shape. So if you want to teach the students what's the main visions of the story, you can give them such graphic organizer. You put interlocking circles. They are interlocked with each other. So you can give them this interlocking story. And let me tell you something. Here we have 3 circles with a beginning, middle, and end. Would you think, please, for a few seconds, what are the incidents that happened at the beginning of the story? You can give me 2 sentences. What are the incidents that happened at the beginning of the story? Again, you can open the mic and speak, it's okay. It would be great.
The mother sent Red Riding Hood to the granny's house.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. Who mentioned this? Yes. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So again, the mother sent the girl to her grandmother's house. Okay, that's wonderful. What's another thing that happened at the beginning of the story? Yes. Yes. Be brave enough, please. Go ahead and speak out loud. Or just write in the chat. It's okay. One sentence, one thing that happened at the beginning of the story. That's one thing, one thing. Give us one sentence. In a basket, okay. She took a cake, Katrina. Yes, she took a cake in the basket. And what happened while she was going to her grandma? Who did she meet? Yes. Who did she meet? She met the wolf in the woods, yes. So we can put these very simple sentences as the beginning of the story. That her mother sent her to her grandmother with a basket full of cakes, and she met the wolf along the way and told him about her her grandmother's house. Okay, that's great. What happened after that? What can be said here in the middle? What incidents happened in the middle of the story? It's very simple. Of course, when we are giving a presentation, we use very simple stories because there isn't enough time for complicated ones. So it helps us to pass the whole idea to you very quickly. She arrived at her grandmother's house, yes. But what happened before she arrived at her grandmother's house? Would you like to watch the story again to remember what happened? Would you like to watch the story once more? Okay, that's great. Why don't you say so? Just say it. Okay, so again, I'm sorry, let's watch the story again. Okay. And remember, we are looking what happened in the middle of the story and what happened at the end of the story, okay?
Little Red Riding Hood lived in a wood with her mother. One day, Little Red Riding Hood went to see her granny. She had a nice cake in her basket. On her way, Little Red Riding Hood met a wolf.
Hello.
Said the wolf.
Where are you going?
I'm going to see my grandmother. She lives in a house behind those trees.
The wolf ran to Granny's house and ate Granny up. He got into Granny's bed. A little later, Little Red Riding Hood reached the house. She looked at the wolf.
Granny, what big eyes you have,
All the better to see you with.
said the wolf.
Granny, what big ears you have,
All the better to hear you with.
Said the wolf.
Granny, what a big nose you have,
All the better to smell you with.
Said the wolf.
Granny, what big teeth you have,
All the better to eat you with.
Shouted the wolf. A woodcutter was in the wood. He heard a loud scream and ran to the house. The woodcutter hit the wolf over the head. The wolf opened his mouth wide and shouted,
Oh,
and Granny jumped out. The wolf ran away, and Little Red Riding Hood never saw the wolf again.
Okay, so is it better now? You remember the incidents of the story? Okay, that's great. Why don't you say so? Okay, so what incidents happened in the middle of the story? What incidents happened in the middle of the story? We said at the beginning, her mother sent her with a basket of cakes to her grandmother, and she met the wolf. That's good. Great. The girl told the wolf where she was going. That's great. That's great. Yes. And what else happened after that? When she told the wolf about her grandma, what happened after that? What did the wolf do? Yes, and when he went to her grandmother's house, what did the wolf? He ate Granny. Yes, that's it. That's it. That's great. Yes. And by the end of the story, what happened? Who arrived at Granny's house? Who arrived at Granny's house? who arrived at Granny's house. After the wolf ate Granny, who came home? Who came to the house? Nice. Red Riding Hood, yes. Little Red Riding Hood. She came to the house. Yes. And she was surprised to see the wolf because she started asking questions. Granny, what big teeth you have, what big mouth, what big ears, what big eyes. And then the wolf jumped and tried to attack the girl. Who came in for help? Who came in for help? The woodcutter, yes, thank you. The woodcutter came in for help. So when you have this kind of graphic organizer in class and in groups, you ask your students to fill in the graphic organizer, again, you are helping them with different tools to think of the different divisions of the story. So when you ask them later on to write a summary of or something of the sort, they have already had the bigger picture over there. We usually have a problem with writing, because the students don't like it. They believe it's rather difficult, and they believe they are not good at writing correct sentences. So they are not usually happy with it. And when we come to ask them to write, they will say, oh, we don't like it, we don't want to do that. But if we started with the story like this, and then we give them the matrix, and then we give them the graphic organizer like this, let me put you an element which can help you a lot with this as well. Take a look at here. You see that the three circles are already interlocked with each other. Can you remember words from the story, whether nouns or verbs, that you believe are common between the beginning and the middle that you can put here? Give me any words that you can remember, nouns or verbs, adjectives, whatever. Can you remember any from words that are common between the beginning and the middle? Can you remember any of the words? Any words? Yes, a nice cake. That's Yumiko. Thank you very much. Yumiko, a nice cake, a basket. That's very interesting. Thank you. Going, Catriona, that's great. Yes. Any other common words between beginning and the middle? While Little Red Riding Hood was going to her grandmother's house, she met the wolf. Yes, Nico, thank you. So again, the wolf is another common word between the beginning and the middle of the story, right? The wolf, yes. Any other words that you can remember? Okay, let's move to the between the middle and the end. Any words that you can remember that are common between the middle and the end? Let me play this one part of the story between the middle and the end. Sorry. Nose, eyes, mouth. Yes, that's great, Catriona. Thank you. Catriona, I'm sorry. Okay, let me play this part for you. This part in the middle only, and to find words.
Said the wolf.
She lives in a...
The wolf ran to Granny's house and ate Granny up. He got into Granny's bed. A little later, Little Red Riding Hood reached the house. She looked at the wolf.
What big eyes you have,
All the better to see you with.
Said the wolf.
Granny. What big ears you have,
All the better to hear you with.
Said the wolf.
Granny. What a big nose you have,
All the better to smell you with.
Said the wolf.
Granny. What big teeth you have,
All the better to eat you with.
Shouted the wolf. A woodcutter was in the wood. He heard a loud scream and ran to the house. The woodcutter hit the wolf over the head. The wolf opened his mouth wide and shouted.
Oh,
and Granny jumped out. The wolf ran away, and Little Red Riding Hood never saw the wolf
Okay, so
again.
give me any verbs, or nouns or adjectives that you have got from that's common between the middle and the end. Any words? Katrina here mentioned the idea of the nose, eyes, mouth. Yes, that's great. Yes, any other? Granny's house, here smell, eaten. Yes, that's great. Any words that are common between the end and the beginning? Loud, interesting. So here you are already giving me different kinds of nouns, verbs, and adjectives. And this is very, very important that you ask your students when they do the matrix, you discuss the story, they retell the story, then you move to the beginning, middle, and end. You can play the video again so that they can remember the story and they can write the different elements of the beginning, middle, and end. And then you can ask them again to watch it for the third time and pick a number of verbs, let's say 5 verbs, 5 nouns, and you can do the same again for the between the beginning and the middle and the end and the end and the beginning. So in this case, you are giving them all the tools that can help them to write back a summary of the story, or even to write sentences for the story. So the most difficult thing in a writing lesson is that the students believe it's too difficult for them to form well-structured sentences. So here you are helping them with the tools. You are helping them to organize their ideas, to pick the main ideas of the story, to help them with the words that they can use, and then you can ask them in groups to sit down and write a summary of the story. So this is going to make things much more easier for them than you could expect. So a graphic organizer, if we are dealing with very young students or beginners, let's say, we can use such a graphic organizer. Are there any other different formats of graphic organizers? Yes, we have. Here is an example of a different format of graphic organizers, like this one. If we are dealing with older students or advanced students, for example, we can have a story map like this one. You can again have the setting, time and place, characters, problem, plot and events, and then resolution. Resolution, that's the ending of the story. So it depends on the kind of students that you are working with. Are you working with older students? Are you working with advanced students or even intermediate ones? It depends on the kind of students and the kind of class that you have. Here is another one again. It's a different one. Again, a story map again, setting, where and when. So we are using different words. Notice here, time and place. It's much easier for beginners. But when we get with intermediate ones, for example, we have where and when. Major characters, minor characters. What's the plot? Event 1, 2, and 3. What's the outcome? So again, the words that you use depend on the level of the students that you have. By the way, if you want the PowerPoint, I can send it to you if you write to me after the session. It's okay, no problem. Again, we have a different kind of graphic organizer. We call it the inverted triangle. If you want the students to write the incidents of the story, right from the beginning up to the end. This is, we can use this kind of inverted triangle. We are filling in the triangle with the events of the story. So they can fill in, write very simple sentences that can end up to the, finally up to the end of the story. In a different way, you can use such a graphic organizer. Problem solution chart. We have a problem, we have a possible solution. So again, we say there isn't a definite solution, but we have what we call possible solutions. So if she hasn't done so and so, she could have done so and so. So if you are dealing, for example, with teaching the if conditions, for example, and you want your students to use the third type, for example, you can help them to use this kind of chart as a kind of practice for the third type of if conditions. A certain problem happened, but if she had done so and so, so and so wouldn't have happened. So it's a different kind of graphic organizer. Another idea which can be very helpful for rather university students or even high school students, again, this is called the thinking maps. Are you familiar with the idea of the thinking maps? Are you familiar? That's a very interesting one, especially if a thinking map is a kind of, it's not a drawing, it's kind of chart that would help you students to organize their way of thinking when they read a certain article or they read a certain story. You want to make sure how much info they have already grasped. So we have different kinds of thinking maps. The most famous of them are the 8 kinds that we have in front of us over here. I will just explain them right away. When, for example, you are teaching your students, for example, let's say starting 4th primary, 5th primary, up to the university students and even with adults, you can use these. I've used them successfully with different stages. For example, you have a comprehension passage today. The students are going to read it together, but instead of just reading silently and then you ask them questions, you divide them into groups and then you introduce the idea of the thinking maps to them. And then you ask them to read a passage and then divide the ideas that they have already got from the passage into one of these maps. They together in a group, they have to choose one of these maps. They have to divide the info through it, and then they have to come out and present it for the rest of the class. When the students do this, they are going to gain confidence because you are going to listen to their own ideas. Why did you choose this kind of map? And how do you find it suitable to the ideas in the passage? And what kind of passage have you read? Is it a story? Is it something scientific? Is it about the research? What is it? It can be done with any kind of reading. Here we have 8 kinds of. The very first one is called circle map. Circle map, you put the main idea in the middle over here, and then the students start putting the separate ideas around in the second one. So again, this is a very interesting kind of map because the students can put the main idea. If we have different divisions for the inside the reading passage, the students can put the main idea in the middle, and then they can put one big idea in this bigger circle. They can make another circle with another idea and so on. So we call it a circle map. We have a tree map, or what we call the mind map. Again, we have main idea. The main idea is divided into 1, 2, 3, for example, and each one of them is divided into other items as well. We have also what we call the bubble map or the spider web, where we have a main idea and it's divided into different ideas or bubbles. We have a double bubble if we have a bigger issue. So we can have this bubble, and this bubble is divided into 2 main bubbles, and then each one of them is divided into other ideas and so on. And then we also have this flow map, which is really, really interesting, and it's very suitable if you are dealing with a historical passage, something that tells us the story of something, the life story of a famous person, the story of a city, a war that took place, and things like that. So it steps, for example, if you have a passage about the research, what happened at the beginning of the research, what happened next, and so on. So it's called a flow map. It's very successful with what we call chronological order of things. So they can put the first idea followed by the second, what happened next, and so on. And then we have multi-flow map. We can have this main idea and what sequences, the steps that happen after that. A very interesting one also here, which is called the brace map. It's rather complicated. It's suitable for university students. You have one main idea. A main idea is divided into a sub-idea with different ideas, and these different ideas are divided into others and so on. And it's usually successful with the university students because it's rather complicated. If you want to discuss opposites or opposite ideas or related ideas, you can use this bridge map. It's very interesting. For example, in the story, not in the story, I'm sorry, in the bridge map, for example, how many new ideas were introduced in the passage, how compared to traditional ideas, for example, if you are speaking about an experiment or a new invention that took place. Something old, something new, opposites. What, for example, for example, there was a good person and a bad person in the story. You are comparing, contrasting things. This kind of bridge is very interesting because it's used like that. You put one idea here, one idea there, and then the students can compare the ideas together. So it's rather interesting to use such thinking maps with students in school, and don't feel that if you are going to use it with the primary students, it's not going to be suitable. On the contrary, it helps the students a lot to organize their way of thinking. And then through these kinds of maps, you can help them to discuss the main ideas of the passage. They are going to choose a speaker or representative from each group who's going to come out and discuss the idea, present the ideas in front of the class. And I usually use it with my even university students. I ask them to come two persons to come to the board. One of them is going to draw the map, and the other one is going to give us a summary of what the whole group found out and why did they choose the bubble the thinking map that they have already chosen. So when this is going to help you understand that the students, how far the students understood the passage that you are introducing, and then later on this is going to help them to write a summary for the passage. When the students use such maps, which they have prepared themselves to write summaries for the passages that they have already discussed with you in class, it's going to give them great confidence, because while using the maps, they are going to use the different vocabulary inside the passage, which is going to help them to feel more confident with the usage of the words. And if you want them to use a certain tense in order to speak about the passage, for example, they are going to practice using the present tenses or to use the past tenses. It's a very good chance to do that. So they can make a summary out of that. You can ask them to make a kind of interview. Imagine that they were in place of a person inside the passage and they are going to speak about that. And if they are dealing with the story, they can go up and act the story if it's possible, do a role play. So thinking maps are one of the very successful elements that helps you with the writing in class. I usually do it with my university students, and right from the very beginning, if I'm introducing any kind of passage, I ask them to divide themselves into groups, choose a a thinking map, put the ideas, choose two speakers to come out, one to draw the map and the other one to express the ideas that they have found out, and then again sit back into groups and start writing a summary for the passage. So it's going to be much more easier for them to practice the usage of the language on one side, and on the other side they are going to help each other with the writing of sentences, and this is going to give them more confidence with the practice of the writing and at the same without the practice of the language, and with the functioning of the vocabulary and the grammar at the same time. This can be another idea again if you choose your students choose the circle map in order to divide ideas, as I've already mentioned while I was introducing the idea, that your students can put the main idea over here, and then you can ask them, with the very first, you have chosen so and so as the first idea. Can you give me words, nouns, that you can use to speak about this idea? To use to express this idea. So if you are dealing with, let's say, beginners to intermediate students, you want to help them with the usage of the language to have more confidence, help them not only to decide about ideas, but to decide about the words that they are going to use in their own presentations or in their own summaries. So you can ask them to put, for example, nouns over here, verbs, you can make another one for adjectives and so on. So when they start writing down, they have these in front of them, So it's going to help them to think much easier about the sentences that they are going to put down in their own copybooks. So if you want to practice the idea that we have done already today, you can do it in the following steps. Use the following steps. What are the steps that we followed? Think of a story, or you introduce the story through a video. Choose a number of words. Ask the students while watching the story to choose, I'm sorry, we can do this as number 3. You can ask them to fill the matrix of the story. You can ask them to fill the graphic organizer. And then you can ask them to choose a number of words. Let's say once choose 5 verbs, once choose 5 nouns, which are common between the beginning and the middle, and then the middle and the end, and then the end and the middle and the end, yes. And then sit together and write a summary for the story. And then please, when you finish, make a cover for your story. Draw something which belongs to the story, which can be a cover for your story if you want to attach it on the board for the other students to read, for example. And it's not necessary to be a wonderful drawing. They can just use stick figures. Note, the students need to present after every step. This is very important because they cannot do everything all of us all on top of each other. You introduce the story, they fill in the story, you discuss it, they fill graphic organizer, you discuss it, you ask them to choose the words, discuss it, then write the story and present, and then make a cover for the story. And then you can encourage them to put it on a board inside the class or outside the class for everybody to see the kind of work that they have already done. So this is the kind of task that you can use with the story. You can function using the story, use it as a tool to help the students to do this kind of task in order to be able to do some kind of writing, to develop their own writing and gain confidence about it. So the most important conclusion that we can sum up out of all this is that task-based learning has the advantage of getting students to use their skills at their current level, which is very important, please, their current level, to do what? To develop the language through its use. So they are going to function using the language learned, whether the vocabulary or the grammar, at their own level, to develop the usage of this language learned, the items of the language learned. It has the advantage of placing the focus of the students towards achieving a goal, which is very important. What was your objective right from the beginning? When you used the story, your objective was to help them to write, to do a good piece of writing. So that's your goal, and that is supposed to be their goal as well, where the language becomes a tool, making the use of language a necessity. So it's very necessary to use the language. So again, if we are clear about the objective, why are we using a story, or how are we going to help our students through a writing lesson, it's going to be much easier for them to go through it as well and gain confidence with the usage of the language, or what we, in other words, as we say, function using the language. These are the references. By the way, if you write graphic organizers online, you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of them. If you want to do your own graphic organizer, you can go to any of these websites. They are very, some of them or most of them are already free, and they can help you because they are going to give you freedom to do your own graphic organizer. You can color it, you can change the theme, you can do any kind of design that you want for your graphic organizer. But please, the most important thing in this case is that you make it as simple as possible, because what's your aim? Your aim is to help your students to like writing, or to get interested in the idea of writing and get involved into it, which is really the most important thing of doing the writing inside the class. And then if you have questions, you're most welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I can't hear you, Mark.
Are there any questions?
If you have any,
you're
most welcome.
Yep. Please unmute.
Yes.
Great.
We can't hear you, Miko.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, nice to meet you. I'm from Japan.
Nice to meet you, Miko. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm an elementary school teacher, and I teach age from 6 to 12. And
Yes.
today I really enjoyed Little Red Riding Hood, and I wanted to use that book for the task-based reading, story writing. And I have a question.
Yes.
I want to know more about the reading list. I mean, like Little Red Riding Hood, like this kind of book.
You mean stories? You mean stories?
Yeah. So
Yes.
please tell me any other book you recommend.
Yes, this is the website of the British Council.
Yes.
Can you see it on the screen? Below you can see www.britishcouncil.org. It's called Learning English Kids. If you go to this website, it's full of stories, full of activities, the students, and for every story you have worksheets.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm gonna use it.
Yeah, it's very, very helpful. It's full of ideas. And every day they are adding more ideas to it. You are going to like it very much. Use this website. It's very, very helpful. It's full of stories.
Wow. Is it free?
Yes, yes, completely free.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. By the way, the British Council has Learning English Kids, Learning English Adults, Learning English Teens. So you have lots of readings and stories and activities, all for free.
Wow, that sounds great.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
You're
I'm
most
gonna check
welcome.
it.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Can I ask one question?
Sure, sure.
In the matrix, I saw a column, point of view. How would you explain the shift in the points of view to elementary level students?
Yes, thank you very much for bringing this forward because I just kept it while I was discussing the idea. This idea of point of view is very important because when you take a look at the story, some kids or some students have different points of view. They don't all of them give the same idea. Are you familiar with the story, for example, called Jack and the Beanstalk? Are you familiar with it?
Mm-hmm.
There is this story of Jack and the Beanstalk where a young boy gets on top of a tree and he goes to a giant's house and he takes from the giant's house, he was very poor. He found that the giant has a hen which brings golden eggs and a harp. And so he takes the harp and the golden eggs and go down the tree and ran away from the giant, and he gave it to his mother and they became very rich. This idea is not nice for school students because this means that if I tell you that what Jack did was very good, this means that I'm encouraging you to steal things. Some students are going to tell you, but he was very poor and needed help. So here you have different points of view. So it's very important to listen to the different points of view of the students because you can help them even understand better or change their attitude in life in general. So this point of view is very important. When you choose the story, be careful what kind of story you're going to use and what kind of discussion are you going to lead with the students. Because this point of view can be suitable for a speaking lesson, for example. If you want them to speak a lot, you can put a story with more than one idea, so you can give them the chance to put different ideas, but the most important thing is that ask them to tell you why. For example, if they believe that Jack was right, so why Jack was right? If Jack was wrong, why Jack was wrong? If, for example, with the story of Little Red Riding Hood over there, here, do you believe that Little Red Riding Hood was wrong? Why was she wrong? It's very clear why was she wrong, but they have to speak. You want them to speak. So you use very simple stories to ask them to put their opinions in order to be able to discuss it. And such simple ideas can be done with elementary students because nowadays, because of the developments of technology, they are more aware than before. So they can even tell you different points of view that you don't expect. So it can be a good tool for speaking. It can be a good tool for them when they go on and write at the end of the lesson.
All
Is
right.
that fine?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Yes, any other questions? And here we have, if you can see here with my contacts, this is the Facebook, my Facebook, where we have our page. It's Teaching ESL Hub. It's not my ESL training anymore. Teaching ESL Hub, as you can see here with the logo, where you can find different kinds of ideas and articles about teaching that you can benefit from. We also do different kinds of interviews with well-known educationalists. You can benefit a lot from them. We also have this blog where I put different summaries for different plenary speeches of different conferences for different well-known trainers. You have lots of ideas that you can use in class. It would be great if you can get on the blog and read some of the ideas over there. You are most welcome. Let me write in the chat again the link to the Facebook page because we have changed it.
Thank you very much. Could I ask you to switch on your cameras and switch on your microphones so we can show appreciation for Maha Hassan?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you want to get the PowerPoint, please write to me. You can send me an email or you can also get to the different ideas on our Facebook page. You're most welcome. I've already set it in the chat box. Thank you very much. Thank you.